In silence and solitude, we discover the voice that cannot be silenced. There is a paradox at the heart of human existence. We crave connection, yet we yearn for independence. We are social creatures, drawn to the comfort of shared experience, but within us lies a deep, unspoken need to stand apart, to hear our own thoughts, and to walk paths untrodden by others. Solitude, far from being an act of rejection, is an invitation to meet oneself. It is not loneliness, but an embrace of the space where the external world fades and the inner world comes alive. To understand the wisdom of solitude, we must first dispel its misconceptions. Solitude is often seen as a withdrawal, a retreat from responsibilities or relationships. But true solitude is not about escaping the world, it is about engaging with it more profoundly. When we step back from the noise, the demands, and the expectations that others place upon us, or that we place upon ourselves, we create a fertile ground for clarity. It is in this stillness that we learn to differentiate between what is essential and what is superfluous. In the absence of external voices, we begin to hear the subtle stirrings of our own. The world is relentless in its clamor for attention. It tells us how to think, what to value, and who to be. But when we listen only to these external narratives, we risk losing the thread of our own story. Solitude, then, becomes an act of reclamation. It is not a shutting out of the world, but a turning inward to rediscover the self that has been drowned out by the demands of the crowd. In solitude, there is a rare and precious freedom, the freedom to be wrong, to question, to dream without judgment. Society is quick to measure, to categorize, to define. But when we are alone, we are not bound by the expectations of others. We can experiment with thoughts, entertain ideas that might seem foolish in the light of collective scrutiny, and explore the edges of our own understanding. This is where true creativity is born, not in the pressure to conform, but in the spaciousness of solitude, where the mind can wander and wonder. Yet solitude is not always comfortable. To be alone is to confront the self in its rawest form. Without the distractions of others, we face the full spectrum of our emotions, our fears, our doubts, our unspoken desires. This confrontation can be unsettling, but it is also deeply transformative. In solitude, we come to know ourselves not as we are seen, but as we are. This knowledge is a source of strength, for when we understand ourselves, we are less swayed by the shifting winds of opinion. The wisdom of solitude is not found in the absence of connection, but in its quality. Those who spend time alone often develop a deeper appreciation for relationships. When we are at peace with ourselves, we approach others not out of need, but out of abundance. Solitude teaches us to listen, not just to our inner voice, but to the voices of those around us, free from the noise of our own projections and insecurities. There is a profound difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness is the longing for connection. Solitude is the realization of wholeness. In solitude, we remember that we are not isolated but interconnected in ways that transcend the immediate and the obvious. The silence of solitude is not empty, it is full of possibility, of insight, of the quiet realization that we are enough. In a world that often equates busyness with purpose and noise with progress, solitude is a radical act. It is a reminder that our worth is not tied to our productivity, that our value is not determined by others. Solitude invites us to pause, to breathe, to simply be. And in that being, we find not isolation, but the vast, infinite expanse of our own presence. Solitude, then, is not the absence of the world, but the presence of oneself, and in that presence we discover a wisdom that no external voice can provide. True independence is not the absence of connection, but the ability to move freely within it. In a world that often pressures us to conform, to adhere to the expectations of society, family, or peers, the idea of independence can seem like a distant dream. We are told that to be truly free, we must separate ourselves, cut ties, and forge our own path, free from the constraints of others. Yet the deeper truth of independence lies not in isolation, but in the graceful dance between the self and the world around it. It is the ability to remain rooted in one's own truth while being fluid enough to move with the changing tides of life. Independence is not about being alone. It is about the freedom to choose the direction of your life, to follow your own inner compass, and to decide who you are in relation to the world. In this sense, independence is not a solitary existence, but a dynamic interaction. To live independently is not to reject connection, but to understand that we are in constant relationship with everything around us. Independence in its truest form is the art of self-determination, the ability to engage with others while remaining true to yourself. When we speak of independence, we often think of someone who defies authority or steps away from convention. While rebellion can be a part of independence, it is not its essence. True independence is not about rebellion for rebellion's sake, but about the courage to choose a path that aligns with your values, even when it diverges from the mainstream. It is about the strength to say no when necessary, to set boundaries that honor your well-being, and to embrace the discomfort of standing apart. But it is also about the grace to say yes when the situation calls for connection, to collaborate, to learn, and to grow with others. In this dance, independence is not rigid or fixed. It is fluid and adaptive, much like the rhythm of a dance partner. You do not need to reject the world to move independently within it. Instead, you must find the beat of your own rhythm and learn how to flow with it. Just as a dancer does not perform in isolation but engages with the space around them, independence is an engagement with the world, not a rejection of it. It is the awareness that, while we are always influenced by the world, we have the power to choose how we respond to it. This kind of independence requires deep self-awareness. It requires the understanding that the external world does not define you, and that your worth is not dependent on others' opinions, approvals, or expectations. To truly be independent, one must first be at peace with oneself. Only then can you engage with the world without losing sight of your inner compass. Independence at its core is a commitment to personal integrity. It is the ability to say, "This is who I am, and I will honor that, regardless of external pressure." But independence is also about knowing when to surrender. True independence does not mean resistance at all costs. It means the wisdom to recognize when to step aside and let the flow of life carry you. It is about understanding that sometimes, in order to move forward, you must let go of the need to control or dictate the outcome. Like a dancer who must sometimes yield to the movement of their partner, independence is about finding the balance between strength and surrender, between standing firm and flowing with the current. In this dance of independence, we come to realize that the most powerful relationships are not those of dependence, but of mutual respect and understanding. It is in these relationships that we find the true freedom to be ourselves, knowing that we are seen, valued, and accepted for who we are. When we are independent, we no longer need to seek validation or approval from others. Instead, we can engage with others from a place of abundance, knowing that we have something unique to offer, and that our worth is not dependent on what others think of us. Independence, then, is not a static state of being, but a dynamic, ongoing process. It is the freedom to move within the world, to dance with life, and to make choices that reflect who we truly are. It is the courage to stand tall and the grace to bend when necessary, to remain rooted in our own truth while navigating the complexities of human connection. True independence is not a rejection of the world, but the ability to navigate it with integrity, awareness, and ease. And in this dance, we find that independence does not make us isolated, it makes us whole. To live authentically is to accept the inevitability of being seen through distorted lenses. There is a quiet power in embracing the fact that not everyone will understand us, and yet it is a power that many are reluctant to wield. We are taught from an early age to seek approval, to belong, to fit into the narratives constructed by those around us. From family expectations to societal norms, the pressure to conform is constant and relentless. But there is a deeper truth that can only be realized when we have the courage to be misunderstood. Our authenticity is not defined by others' perceptions of us, but by the alignment of our actions with our own values and truths. Misunderstanding is an uncomfortable companion on the journey of self-discovery. When we stand firm in our own beliefs, choices, and paths, we are often met with skepticism, judgment, or even disdain. People will look at us, and they will see what they wish to see, not necessarily what we are. Their expectations, experiences, and biases will color their perception of us, creating a picture that is, at best, incomplete, and at worst, inaccurate. To be misunderstood is to face the dissonance between how we see ourselves and how others see us. It can feel isolating, even painful, but it is also one of the most profound aspects of living a truly authentic life. The courage to be misunderstood requires a radical acceptance of who we are, without needing the validation of others to reinforce our identity. It is a leap into the unknown, a willingness to face criticism or rejection in the pursuit of a life that is true to who we are. This courage is not about being reckless or indifferent to the feelings of others, but about knowing that our truth is more important than our comfort within the narrow confines of collective approval. It is about choosing to follow a path that resonates with our inner voice, even if that path diverges from the well-trodden routes others expect us to follow. In a world that often prioritizes harmony and agreement, the courage to be misunderstood asks us to break free from the constraints of external expectations. It is about seeing the value in our differences, knowing that the things that set us apart are often the things that will lead us to the fullest expression of who we are. To be misunderstood is to be free of the need to explain, to justify, to fit into predefined boxes. When we stop worrying about being accepted, we begin to live with more authenticity, more integrity. We find ourselves in the rawness of our own desires, ambitions, and dreams, unapologetically expressing who we are without the filter of others' judgments. But the journey of being misunderstood is not without its challenges. It requires resilience, the strength to continue walking your path, even when others doubt or misunderstand your direction. It means standing firm in your truth when the world around you is trying to impose its own version of who you should be. The more you align with your true self, the more you might be misunderstood by those who have become accustomed to seeing you through their own limited lens. It can be a lonely road, but it is also one that is rich with growth and self-awareness. It is through being misunderstood that we learn to trust ourselves more deeply, to find validation not from external sources, but from the quiet assurance of knowing we are living true to our essence. At its core, the courage to be misunderstood is not about defiance or rebellion for its own sake. It is about the deeper act of self-acceptance and self-respect. It is about refusing to live a life dictated by others' expectations or definitions of success. It is about understanding that our worth is not contingent upon the validation of others. And while it is true that human connection is vital, the most meaningful connections come when we are able to show up as our true selves, without the mask of pretension or the fear of judgment. When we have the courage to be misunderstood. The greatest teachers often speak not in words, but in the quiet presence of their being. In a world brimming with noise, with the constant hum of technology, media, and the endless chatter of others, silence is often regarded as an absence, something to be avoided or filled with sound. Yet silence is not emptiness, it is a space rich with meaning, a canvas upon which the deepest truths can emerge. The art of listening to silence requires us to shift our perception, to hear beyond the superficial sounds that surround us, and to attune ourselves to the subtle language of stillness. We often think of listening as a passive activity, simply receiving information through the ears, but true listening goes much deeper. It is an active engagement with the present moment, an openness to whatever is being communicated, even if it is not verbal. Silence, in this context, is not merely the absence of sound, it is a profound presence that offers us an opportunity to listen in a way that goes beyond the ordinary. It calls us to pay attention to what is not being said, to the spaces between words, to the quiet currents of emotion, intention, and meaning that flow beneath the surface of our interactions. When we listen to silence, we are forced to confront the noise within ourselves. In the absence of external distraction, the mind can no longer focus solely on the world around it. It turns inward, and in that stillness we often find that the internal dialogue, the thoughts, worries, and judgments that constantly run through our minds becomes louder and more pronounced. At first, this can be uncomfortable, even unsettling. We may find ourselves resisting the silence, filling it with thoughts or actions just to avoid the discomfort of being present with ourselves. But the true power of silence lies in our ability to sit with this discomfort, to allow the noise of our own thoughts to settle, and to hear the deeper truths that lie beneath them. Silence teaches us patience. In our fast-paced world, we are conditioned to value speed, efficiency, and instant results. But silence moves at its own pace. It does not demand attention, but invites us to slow down and be present, to accept that some things take time to reveal themselves. In silence, we learn to cultivate a different kind of attention, one that is not rushed or goal-oriented, but is simply open to the unfolding of the moment. The art of listening to silence is an invitation to be still, to listen without expectation, and to allow life to unfold in its own time. Listening to silence also requires a deep trust in the unknown. We live in a culture that prizes certainty, that seeks answers and solutions at every turn, but silence holds no answers, only questions. It asks us to sit with uncertainty, to be comfortable with the unknown, and to trust that in time the answers we seek will reveal themselves perhaps not in the way we expect, but in the way that is most true to our deeper understanding. Silence does not give us immediate gratification, but it offers something far more valuable: insight, clarity, and a deeper connection to the present moment. The more we practice the art of listening to silence, the more we begin to recognize its many layers. There is the silence between words, in the pauses of a conversation, where meaning can often be found more profoundly than in the words themselves. There is the silence of nature, the stillness of a forest, a mountain, or the vastness of the ocean, where we are reminded of our own smallness and the interconnectedness of all things. There is the silence within, the quiet place in our hearts and minds, where we can hear the still, small voice of intuition, guiding us toward a life that is aligned with our truest self. In silence, we find a mirror for our own soul. It shows us who we truly are, beyond the roles we play, the masks we wear, and the identities we create. It strips away the distractions and reveals the essence of our being. When we listen to silence, we are not just listening to the world, we are listening to ourselves. We are hearing the whispers of our own truth, the desires and dreams that have been waiting patiently for us to acknowledge them. Silence holds the key to understanding our deepest longings, our fears, and our aspirations. The art of listening to silence is a practice, one that requires patience, openness, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. It is a practice that leads us to a deeper connection with ourselves and with the world around us. In a world that is often filled with noise and distraction, silence offers us a refuge, a place where we can reconnect with what is most essential. When we learn to listen to silence, we discover that it is not an absence, but a presence that has the power to transform our understanding of the world and of ourselves. To live without apology is to understand that you are the only one who can live your life. In a world that constantly pushes us toward conformity, where we are expected to apologize for our uniqueness, unapologetic living becomes a radical act of self-affirmation. It is the courage to stand firmly in our truth, to honor our individuality, and to express ourselves without fear of judgment or rejection. Yet this mastery is not about being inconsiderate or willfully defiant. Rather, it is about recognizing the inherent worth of our existence and refusing to diminish it in the face of external pressures. Unapologetic living is not about being immune to criticism or impervious to the opinions of others. It does not mean that we never examine our actions or seek to improve ourselves. What it does mean is that we no longer seek validation for the simple act of being who we are. We stop apologizing for our thoughts, our feelings, and the choices that define our path. Instead of shrinking or dimming our light to accommodate others, we embrace our uniqueness as a source of power. From an early age, many of us are conditioned to apologize for who we are, whether it's our appearance, our opinions, our desires, or our dreams. We learn that to fit in, we must tone ourselves down, hide parts of our true selves, or mold our behavior to align with the expectations of others. This conditioning often carries into adulthood, creating a pattern of seeking approval and offering apologies for our very existence. We apologize for speaking our mind, for setting boundaries, for taking up space in the world. We apologize for having needs, for expressing emotions, and for wanting something different from what others expect of us. But when we live apologetically, we are living a life that is not truly our own. We are conforming to a version of ourselves that is dictated by the opinions and expectations of others. The mastery of unapologetic living begins when we break free from this pattern. It starts with the realization that we have the right to exist as we are, without explanation. We do not owe anyone an apology for our existence, for the way we think, or for the choices we make. Our authenticity is not something to be ashamed of or hidden away. To live unapologetically is to stop seeking permission to be ourselves. It is a deep, unwavering acceptance of who we are, without the need to justify our actions or feelings to anyone. This kind of living requires immense courage. It requires the strength to stand in our truth, even when it is met with resistance. It means we will face criticism, misunderstanding, and sometimes even rejection. But when we are rooted in our own authenticity, we no longer fear the opinions of others. We learn that we are not responsible for how others perceive us. Their judgments are a reflection of their own experiences, not a statement about our worth. When we stop apologizing for who we are, we give ourselves permission to be fully and completely ourselves, without holding back or watering down our essence. Unapologetic living also requires a willingness to embrace discomfort. When we stop apologizing, we often encounter a sense of unease. There is a vulnerability that comes with living authentically and awareness that others may not understand or agree with us. But it is precisely in this discomfort that growth occurs. The more we step into our truth, the more we expand our capacity for self-acceptance. We learn to trust ourselves, to listen to our own inner wisdom, and to make choices that align with our values, not the expectations of others. Living unapologetically does not mean disregarding the feelings of others or acting without empathy. It simply means that we refuse to silence ourselves for fear of causing discomfort or ruffling feathers. It is about finding the balance between honoring our truth and respecting the experiences of others. In this way, unapologetic living becomes an expression of self-respect, not arrogance. It is a commitment to honoring our boundaries, our needs, and our desires without guilt or shame. The mastery of unapologetic living is an ongoing journey. It is a practice of continually returning to ourselves, of reaffirming our worth and our right to live authentically. It is about rejecting the cultural narrative that tells us we must shrink to fit in, and embracing the truth that we are enough as we are. When we stop apologizing for being ourselves, we not only transform our own lives, but also create space for others to do the same. In this way, unapologetic living becomes an act of liberation not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. Ultimately, the mastery of unapologetic living is about reclaiming our sovereignty. It is about taking ownership of our lives, of our choices, and of our truth. It is about saying, I am here and I am worthy without the need for anyone's permission or approval. When we live unapologetically, we step into the fullness of who we are, free from shame, free from fear, and free to create a life that is truly our own. A river does not ask for permission to flow, it simply moves, carving its own path through the land, reshaping everything in its course. The river's journey is not defined by the obstacles in its way, but by its relentless drive to find its path. The rocks, the mountains, and the valleys may attempt to obstruct it, but the river's persistence wears them down over time, creating its own route, guided by the rhythm of nature. This is the essence of living with purpose and authenticity, a refusal to be confined by external expectations, an inner determination to move forward regardless of the challenges that arise. In life, there are many forces that seek to direct us, to tell us which path to follow and what goals to pursue. Society, family, and even our own fears and doubts can create a blueprint for who we should be. But just like a river that finds its way around obstacles, we too must learn to carve our own path, trusting that the flow of our authentic desires will guide us to the right direction. The river does not seek approval from the terrain it crosses, nor does it hesitate when faced with an obstacle. It adapts, it flows, and it eventually finds a way forward. In this way, we too must embrace our inner strength and have the courage to pursue our own journey, even when it takes us off the well-trodden path. The process of carving our own path is not always easy. It requires patience and perseverance, much like the river that slowly erodes the hardest of stones. The path is not always clear, and there are times when we may feel as if we are moving aimlessly or battling the forces that try to control us. Yet the river teaches us that persistence leads to transformation. Over time, what once seemed like an impenetrable barrier becomes an integral part of the landscape, shaped by the river's flow. Likewise, the obstacles we encounter in life, whether they be personal doubts, societal pressures, or external challenges, can become catalysts for growth and change, shaping us into who we are meant to become. A river's course is never linear. It bends, it meanders, and sometimes it even goes in directions that seem unexpected. Yet it always continues its journey, following the path that feels most natural. In our own lives, the most fulfilling journeys are rarely straight lines. We often take detours, try different things, and face unexpected twists along the way. These experiences, though they may seem like distractions, are actually part of the process of finding our true course.